Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Sunshine Coast Regional District Committee of the Whole meeting at 9:30 on May 23rd, 2024, and acknowledge that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is within the territories of the Shishel and the Squamish Nations. First, we need to adopt the agenda. I don't know if there's an amendment. There is a motion associated that I'm wording for a motion that I'm proposing. Associated with item number 2 that I've distributed to directors. I don't know if that needs to be on the agenda. It's directly connected to that report. But, just notice of that. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Director Gabius. Seconded by Director Bax. All those in favor? The agenda is adopted. And now we have a report on the Lower Crown Raw Water Reservoir Project update. And I trust our Director from Infrastructure Services will probably want to speak to this.
Thanks for the opportunity, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide an update to the board on the status of the Lower Crown Raw Water Reservoir. This last time we provided the update was in November, so I think it was staff were considering it was timely to provide the board with a status update. There's a lot of information in the report, and I will provide some highlights in this introduction. Currently, the Shishel Nation, who is the proponent of this project, and we're collaborating actively with them on the project, has not received grant funding for the construction of the commission yet. They're in active conversation with senior levels of government, but so far the entire amount has not been secured yet. Some outstanding items to be addressed are we still need to do all the permitting. There's a lot of engineering is ongoing, and as further technical assessments are ongoing. There's a need to develop agreements between the SRD and the Shishel Nation in terms of operating and ownership and maintenance of the works. And staff confirmed that there's a need for an electoral approval process to be held by the SRD before we can enter into such an agreement. Initial cost estimate are currently up to $1 million a year, and it includes a variety of maintenance costs, operating costs, costs for a lease agreement for us to lease the land from the nation. And that number still needs to be further refined in upcoming weeks and months. We also recognize that the board has not made their final confirmation on this project yet, so the staff outlined some things for the board to consider at that time. But the work itself has an impact on other activities that we're undertaking in terms of work priorities. And it will continue to meet the timelines as we're currently are targeting, which is commissioning late spring 2025 for actually so that we have half of the reservoir full for the summer of 2025. That we will require that other work is receiving lower priority or delayed. Otherwise, there's no way that the staff and the Infrastructure Service Department, but also on the Legislative and Finance Departments, can focus on the work that's required to meet these timelines. As indicated, there's an electoral approval process required, and it can be an alternative approval process or a referendum to be determined at a later date. As indicated, this project can make a huge difference to the water supply for the Chapman system. We have not been able to confirm yet how much, but I think we're getting closer to having a good picture of what it could look like. But as indicated in the report, there's a lot of things that still need to be confirmed before we can provide the board with our recommendations in terms of next steps for electoral approval and lease agreements for this project. Happy to answer any questions the committee might have. Thank you.
Thank you, GM. So I'll open it up to questions. I've got a couple. I guess I'll start then, and I will ask, could you explain a little more about the requirement of the AAP? Because, I mean, presumably we're applying for grants or intergovernmentally here to cover the capital costs of this project, and you wouldn't normally get an AAP and go into debt for the operations because that's an ongoing cost. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly what the debt would be needed for. Officer.
Thank you for the question, Chair. It relates to the nature of the long-term agreement, the lease agreement extending beyond 5 years. So there is a requirement, if the project is capital in nature, that we must go out for elector approval. It's a liability under agreement.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions on this? Director Gabius? Oh, I see Director McMahon too. Yeah. Okay, Director McMahon first.
I was just trying to dig out the information but couldn't find it. So when we say that it would add $1 million to our operating costs, what are our current operating costs on the Chapman system?
I'll look to our GM of Infrastructure Services.
Thank you very much for the question. It's hard, that will be presented at a later date of the information. It's hard to compare it at the moment with other sources. Initial assessments conclude that it is would be comparable or higher with the cost that we currently have associated with Church Road. But in case of Church Road, it includes a significant portion is debt and interest payments. So, of course, after the length of the debt payments are at a certain point, they will cease to assist, and then the operating costs will be significantly lower. While these for Lower Crown, they will be there annually, and they are actually not really related to how much water we're actually taking from the reservoir. There's a lot of maintenance and operating costs just associated with the infrastructure itself. And at the end of every season, even if we haven't used all the water for to provide to the community, we still need to. We're still considering that we need to drain the reservoir. So even for that purpose, we will need to run pumps then to drain the reservoir.
Director McMahon.
Yeah, it just would be helpful if we had the number expressed as a percentage. So it would be, a 5% increase in our operating costs or a 50% increase. Thank you.
Thank you. That information will be provided at a later date as part of our full financial analysis.
I have another one, and it's directly related to operating costs, so I'm going to jump in on that just before Director Gabius and Director Bax are on the speaking list, and that's, do we have a cost recovery plan for those operating costs? How do we, there's, the grants are for capital. How would the board pay for these operating costs?
Thank you for the question. That still has not been determined. There are several options for them. One of them could be user fees if it's part of if we consider it to be part of the Chapman system, but it's still to be confirmed.
Thank you, Director Gabius.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the technical items listed on page 4, wondering if these requirements would be needed for any kind of reservoirs or just this one in particular?
Thank you for the question. Sorry, did I jump the gun? No, in general, these are valid for any type of large open reservoirs of the type we're dealing with here. And for example, the LG concern is primarily of concern because of the elevation. It's a low elevation. It's it's less of a concern when you're transforming lakes, natural lakes, alpine lakes into a reservoir like we did with Chapman Lake and Edwards Lake. Because of the elevation, there's a much reduced risk of algae blooms at that elevation. Thank you.
Director Bax.
I have a question for the chair about the motion
It's
that,
not on the table yet.
okay,
Chair, right now it's time to ask staff questions.
all right.
Does anyone else have any questions? Director Gabius?
Thank you, Chair. You might be able to answer this. Do we know when the results for the test drilling, if I could just get a reminder of when those results will be coming to the board?
The results, okay, my understanding of reading, well, just our latest reports is that there's no schedule on that because they're still waiting, the test drilling hasn't started and waiting for approval. Is that still the case, staff?
Yes, that's correct.
Director Stamford?
Thank you, Chair. Staff are speaking to further financial information at a later date. I'm just wondering if we could get some kind of indication of roughly when that later date is.
The staff?
Thank you for the question. The financial information is in part dependent on technical analysis that are currently being still completed by the Seychelles Nation Nether consultant in terms of how certain components will be, issues will be addressed. And based on that, we can actually do a detailed analysis of the financial implications, as well as staffing implications. How much time would it actually, do we foresee that it would cost from staff to actually operate this system?
Director McMahon?
Yeah, sorry, I think it was in here, but if you could, if staff could refresh my memory on how long it takes to run an AAP and how long it takes to run a referendum.
Good question.
Thank you for the question. So an alternative approval process, typically it's a 4-month process, and a lot of it depends how quickly the inspector approval comes back from the province, which typically takes 8 to 10 weeks. If we were to go to a full-on assent vote referendum in this situation, it would likely be a regional referendum. It would involve the District of Seychelles as well. So I would say it's almost the equivalent to running an election. We would have to have polling stations in each electoral area as well as in the municipality. We're probably looking at maybe 10 months process for that.
Any other questions? Director Lee?
Thank you, Chair. I notice it says, and the SCRD has consultants working on this initial phase of the project. How many consultants do we have, and who are they?
Thank you for the
Look at
question.
GM.
We have funds to allow for consultants to work on the project, and contracts that might be required for the SRD's involvement. Currently, there are no contracts with consultants to assist on the project. Thank you.
Thank you for answering that. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'd like to suggest wording for a motion, which I've distributed to directors, and I'd like to introduce it. I can't actually move it because I'm not in the function, I don't believe, so I would like to suggest it, and we'll see where that goes. Basically, this is coming straight out of this report. Reading this report, I'm very concerned about the impact of all the work this is taking on other priorities that are shorter term. There's a lot of concern in our community coastwide, and that includes my community in Gibson's, as I've stated before. with regional water this summer, and what we're hearing about the lack of snowpack, concerns about drought just being, and we're hearing strong provincial concerns and being warned by our provincial government that we need to prepare for very severe drought. And we really need to look, it's almost June here. This is our last meeting before June. We really need to look at some of the shorter term solutions, and I want to clearly identify a reservoir for the Chapman system is undoubtedly something that will be helpful. It's a way of managing the supply we currently have. It's not new supply. And there are other ways of managing the supply we currently have that can be implemented in the short term and can help us this summer and can help us next summer. By the timeline that I see that keeps getting pushed out and out, I don't have a lot of confidence that we'll meet 2025, actually, I'm sorry to say. And when I hear about how long licensing takes, I found this project highly appealing when it was first pitched, largely due to the hope that it could be in place. It was a quick win. It was the original vision was this would be in place by last summer, and this report today, if it tells us anything, I know there were a lot of questions about numbers. It tells us this is no longer a quick win. This has taken a long time, taken a lot of work even to get to this point, and there are still significant unanswered questions. And I'll just highlight some of the biggest ones to me that I'm concerned about. One is those operating costs, how the users of the function are going to find how to fund those, suddenly fund potentially 800,000 to $1 million operating in years when the reservoir may not even be needed. Where's that money going to come from? What's the plan for that? There's no grants for that. Secondly, probably my biggest, I just think the total non-starter for this is the AAP. I think going into an AAP at this time is far from certain. I think it'll, at a time when we need to be uniting our community around water, having to do this provincial, and if we could decide locally, we wouldn't choose an AAP. I don't think we'd choose a referendum, but we are constrained by these provincial rules, and they insist on something that is going to be a very divisive process. And in my view, having lived here through the AAP on meters as a director here 2 terms ago, I don't think a process that's very likely to succeed, sadly. And that'll just be a travesty. And I think I highly respect and value the nation's leadership on this. I highly value the work our staff is doing on it. And I don't want to see all that work gone to naught in a really disappointing way. So I feel like my reasoning for proposing this motion is we need to prioritize things that can be quick wins, that can help us this summer, that can help us next summer, because I don't know if it's far from certain that the reservoir will be in place by then. And continue to consider the reservoir and find ways to make it viable, but not put it as a priority above the initiatives that we can actually get done and help our water supply for this summer for our residents. And I'll read out the wording right now. Of course, I'm completely open to changes, and I can't even move it, so, and that is that the Sunshine Coast Regional District pause staff work on the Lower Crown Reservoir project until a new seasonal environmental flow needs regime for Chapman Creek is approved by the province, set to levels determined by local Shishal Nation SCRD co-monitoring to be necessary to support fish and wildlife habitat. Further, enhanced siphon use for Chapman Lake is successfully negotiated with the province and Shishal Nation for a multi-year term, guided by our mutual interest in the sustainability of the ecosystem. Thirdly, the 2024 groundwater exploration program is proceeding with test drilling. Fourthly, a list of the highest water users in the Chapman and South Pender systems is reviewed by the board, and a strategy is enacted to significantly reduce that usage that includes shutting off the water to unreasonably high users by stage 2. Fourthly, the Aquifer 560 agreement with the town of Gibsons is being actively implemented to optimize the interconnection between the SCRD and town of Gibsons water systems. And finally, a schedule of intergovernmental water meetings to take place at least every 2 months, but preferably monthly, is set with a focus on discussing critical issues and concerns identified by elected leadership, moving toward the establishment of a permanent regional watershed board with Indigenous co-governance, and with the first meeting to be scheduled by mid-June. And for clarity, that'd be the first meeting of these meetings, not the watershed board. That'd take a lot longer. And that's what I'll start with. I've got a couple others that we could look at as well, but that's a lot to consider. And I'm hoping somebody could move it for discussion. I think it's an important discussion to have. If moved by Director Gabius. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So Director McMahon had her hand up. I'll take that.
Yes, while I'm not fully in agreement with the motion, I do think that it is worthy of discussion, so I'm moving it.
Okay. Moved by Director McMahon and seconded by Director Gabius. Do you want to speak to that, Director McMahon?
Only briefly to say that I also was initially very optimistic about this project because it seemed like a slam dunk. There's a hole in the ground, let's fill it with water. And appreciated also the Sechelt Nation's leadership in this. But the further we get into it, the more concerns I have.
Director Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a question about being able to go into private conference right now, about going into camera and having discussion with the board. There is some stuff that's behind the scenes on this that hasn't been able to be communicated to directors because we haven't been able to coordinate a meeting. So there is some information that I can't share in open public about negotiations, and this may help a lot of this decision. So
Okay, I think we probably need to hear that before we make a recommendation on this. And yeah, I want to echo that one reason for one of the points in this motion is that we haven't been able to get a meeting, and I think it's been really frustrating for both groups, and hasn't helped the momentum of this project. And it's been so hearing that information would be helpful. So I'll just look to our corporate officer to give us some guidance on doing that.
Thank you, Chair. If the committee wishes, they could go in camera under the Community Charter, Section 91K, negotiations related to a new service that is at its preliminary stages.
Okay, I'll look to, okay, that's a motion by Director Stamford, seconded by Director Gabius to go in camera, the wording that the corporate officer just said, which is under 91K of the Community Charter. We need to vote on that. All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We are back to our public meeting of the Sunshine Coast Regional District Committee of the Whole. We did need to go in camera based on Section 91K of the Community Charter, which is negotiations related to a municipal service. There was significant information that needed to be discussed and considered in that, which can't be public at this stage regarding this. That does have implications to this motion, and may have implications on how we consider it. But we do have a public discussion to consider this motion on the table, and I'll go to Director Toth to continue that conversation.
Thank you, Chair. I actually wasn't going to make any conversation on this. This is not a motion I'd be comfortable voting on at this time without consulting with my counsel first. So I was going to make a motion to refer this to the next intergovernmental meeting.
So that would be the next intergovernmental meeting related to water. Yeah, presumably, yeah. Okay, so that motion is seconded. Do we need that clarification at the end that regarding water?
I mean, Chair, I can't recall the last time we met as an intergovernmental body and it wasn't about water.
Yeah. So I'll just add that for clarity. I mean, I think it helps for public outlets. So that's the motion regarding water, and Director Bax has seconded it, and I've got Director McMahon first and then Director Bax. Sorry.
In view of the urgency of the situation, I'm wondering if we could put a time on when we will have a meeting?
Okay. Is it viable to hope for something this meeting within the next week, the next 2 weeks? I think the sooner the better is the feeling I'm getting from this table. I wonder if, Director Paul, do you have any insights into when calendar? I mean, I heard it, sometimes there's big trips that the council needs to make to Ottawa and et cetera, but.
Thank you, Chair. Just in conversation with the council right now to try to get it for as early as the 31st. We're trying to clear our schedule to see if we can move stuff. So, just waiting for confirmation.
Okay. So just hearing that, are we confident that this is going to happen as soon as possible, or do we want to add some wording to the motion and amend it? Asking that of the board here, as that was raised by Director McMahon. Director McMahon?
In that case, I would propose the amendment to say within 30 days.
Okay. Is that seconded? Seconded by Director Inkster, Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to recommend that the committee forward this to board for consideration of adoption this afternoon for immediate action by staff.
Okay. We have an amendment. Are we going to do an amendment to amendment? Let's just deal with the first amendment first. All those in favor? That's a 30 days piece. I don't vote on this. Even an amendment, yeah. Okay, yeah. Director McMahon?
Further amendment that we forward this to board this afternoon.
Seconded by Director Inkster. All those in favor? The motion carries. So we have an amended motion, twice amended motion in front of us, which is to refer this matter, this motion to the next intergovernmental meeting on water to be held within 30 days, and that this go to board this afternoon. Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. So I think we're done. Item 2. Now we're on to the budget status report. Oh,
I don't believe we've made a motion to accept all
sure.
reports.
Just, are you making that
I'm
motion?
making that motion to
Thank you,
accept all
Vice Chair.
reports.
Seconded by Director Toth. All those in favor? The motion carries. And budget project status report is next. This is the regular report of everything that's being done in the SCRD right now, and we've got a few GMs here to be prepared to answer questions from directors if there are any. I see Director McMahon.
I actually did read the whole thing. I noted a lot of updates in there. I noted that in some cases, it looked to me like a project was started but was still marked as not started, but I don't have any questions.
Okay. Director Lee, do you have any questions? I know you do. You always do. So I'm just going to go straight to you. We've got radio silence otherwise.
Yes, I have a lot of questions, but I was just wondering how valid they were considering our time constraints. Give me a minute to go down my list, if you wouldn't mind.
We could just kick this up the agenda too, if we want to deal with the park recovery projects or something. If you're worried about time, the budget debrief might take some time.
I did have one question on page 13.
Okay.
And it was to do with the Baker Beach and the Ocean Beach Esplanade. And my question was, it was suggested that we could get this ready to go by Q3 2024. And I was wondering how realistic that time frame was, seeing that it's been on the books as long as I can remember. Are we actually that close is my question. Line number. It's actually right at the top of page 13. It's the first one. And it is line number 51.
Okay, I'll look to staff on that question.
Thank you, through the chair. So this funding on that line is specifically around the archaeological work, the surveys, the permits, and that's embedded into the base for that particular piece. The actual project itself, if there's a construction piece to it, would need to come back for additional funding because that would not be included in this line. So we are still working through potential opportunities or what could be done at Baker's Beach. I don't anticipate construction by Q3 for anything, but our archaeological work and our permits and such, that might be wrapped up by that time. And then OBE, for the most part, that's all wrapped up in terms of what we're going to do with that information and how we're going to proceed. That's going to be a separate project. Thank you.
Lee?
Thank you very much. That actually, I didn't phrase my question quite right. Baker Beach is an extremely sensitive area, and yet at the same time, the ocean's washing it away. So we were in between a rock and a hard place here, and it would be really good news if we actually had the permits and all of that stuff settled by the time mentioned. It's good news if that's a good timeline. So thank you.
Good. Director Gabius.
Thank you, Chair. A very quick question for our CFO. Line 18, budget software, is this going to be utilized? Understanding this is going to help tremendously with the budget process, is this scheduled to be on for the upcoming budget?
CFO. Wearing the CFO hat right now.
Thank you, Chair. So at this particular time, we've had a couple of staff vacancies that we're hoping to have in place. We just concluded a recruitment process for 2 of the postings that we're hoping to help with this particular project. So we are a little bit delayed in issuing a scope of work. However, we're going to proceed anyway. Whether or not it's in time for the 2025 budget is unlikely. There might be some aspects of it that we're hopeful are, but probably midway through at best case scenario. Thank you.
Director Stamford.
Yes, thank you. For line 28, there's an update on the Hopkins Landing major replacements. It's more of a comment that I think at the public meeting held at the beginning of this month, there seemed to be a misunderstanding that the project would actually be being built in July. And it looks like by the status update that the RFP will be posted, but that the completion will be year-end. So I'm hoping that the Let's Talk SCRD for Hopkins Landing is updated to reflect that, if it hasn't already.
Look into staff. I heard it kind of said hopefully it's updated. Maybe that's, I don't know if that's a question.
Thank you, Chair. I was on the Let's Talk page trying to take a look at whether or not the page has been updated. And I think I went to the wrong page. But certainly, if it's not updated, we will, because that's always been the intent. We didn't anticipate construction until later in the fall. Thank you.
Staff has taken note. Director Lee.
Whoops, I forgot to get the line number. Line number 56. It's in regards to the Cooper's Green boat ramp repairs. And it appears that there was a report, draft report in March. And now we're in May. I was wondering when we might see that report. I'm kind of very interested in the Cooper's Green boat ramp because the overflow ends up in Area A. So I'd like to make sure that sucker keeps going.
Okay.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, staff.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So we did have an engineering assessment done, so we're aware of the condition of the boat ramp. What we're trying to do is actually look at Cooper's Green holistically. We have a lot of different projects going on in Cooper's Green, and when we go into public engagement about the Cooper's Green Park Enhancement Project, the boat ramp is a critical piece of the park. So we're looking at all of this as one, and we anticipate that when we start to flesh through the engagement piece, that the boat ramp will become part of it, and those recommendations probably would come forward at the same time. It doesn't make sense to really approach them individually at this point. Thank you.
Any more questions, directors? Director Lee, do you have another one?
If you could just give me a sec here. I write on the actual page, so I need to go down to the pages. Yes, thank you. It's just on line 78, but it's actually for dealing with more than just the one line, but that's where my notes start. I was just wondering if we could get an update on the power system and to the dump, and whether we're optimistic we'll get it this year, or just where we are overall in it. There's several lines of it here, so.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. With respect to the power supply to the Seashell landfill, we received recently the required approvals from the Ministry of Forest in terms of the alignment and the position of the poles along the road. And we're currently awaiting the final design, some last final design pitch to be concluded, and then we can proceed with awarding the contracts as required. Thank you.
I'll go to Director Gabius. Or have a follow-up, sorry.
No, I think everybody was okay with that. Yes.
Okay. Director Gabius.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking for clarification about the contact pond relocation project on line 79 and 81. Just clarification, we're waiting for provincial permit approvals and construction needs to start this summer. Is that correct? And if so, are we hopeful that this provincial permit approval will happen in time for the summer construction?
Thank you very much for the question, through the chair. Yes, we need an amendment to our operating certificate for Seashield landfill, and preliminary conversations with ministry staff were hopeful, were positive that they would provide us with that approval. However, we haven't received an update yet, very recently, and I'm currently working on escalating that matter higher up to within the ministry to get an expedited answer. And the relevance for us is because unless we know for sure that we have the approval to actually start construction, we're still uncertain if we have a landfill disposal option after 2026. So we need to have the clarity as soon as possible so that we actually know that we don't have to pivot very rapidly to plan B or plan C, as well as that we can initiate other projects like partial closure of the current landfill, etc., which we cannot start until this project has been completed. Thank you.
That's concerning. We need to talk about solid waste more. That's a reminder as a board. There are big picture issues going on. So hopefully we can schedule that. Director Lee.
Thank you. I'm on line 86 now, moving right along. It's in regards to the North Pender Harbor treatment plant improvements. I believe we're almost finished the design, and yet the thing says not started. So if I could just get some clarity on where we are with that.
Thank you for the question, Director. That's for the chair. The first phase of this project was to do a preliminary design and to confirm the feasibility of the project. That phase has been completed, and the phase to do the more final design has not been initiated yet due to staff shortages. Thank you.
Director Bax.
I'm just going to say, talk about line 15 of the completed projects, and thank staff for their innovative and low-cost solution in providing the Deputy Chief of the Roberts Creek Fire Department a new vehicle, a new-to-him vehicle from Half Moon Bay. So thank you for being innovative and cost-conscious.
Director Lee, you have any more?
Yes, indeed. I'm skipping over some of them here, but on line 112, it talks about the Chapman Creek raw water pump station and the need to slow it down so we can make more use of the available water, well water, the alternate sources. Am I to understand correctly that this will not be done this summer?
Thank you for the question. The lead time for these pumps is about 16 weeks. We've received the budget approval to order them early this year, and we're currently in the purchasing process. We are trying to see if we can find a solution to get them in place early this summer, but that might not be the case. And we have an alternative approach confirmed that will allow us to run the pumps at a lower capacity for a limited period of time when we get to elevated stages later this year, potentially.
Thank you. That's actually good news. I noticed that the internet was all fixed up at the dump. And it's called Complete. And I wanted to say that is great. I was wondering exactly what the solution was, just out of curiosity. And is it working as anticipated? In other words, we were having trouble running the machine because we didn't have internet connectivity. And so I just wanted to confirm that that's now all fixed.
Okay, is there any more to elaborate on there?
Yes, we repositioned and we placed some new receivers, and we now have a better line of sight. Doesn't mean that there will be never any connectivity issues anymore, but at least they are now to a way more acceptable level. Thank you.
Director Stamford.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if there has been any further movement on finding a solution for the Church Road pump and chemical storage. I didn't see it on the list.
I don't think it was a budget project, would be why it wasn't on the list, I don't think, but I'll go to the GM.
Thank you. We're working on an update to the community that we're hoping to get posted today or tomorrow on the Let's Talk page in terms of next steps. As indicated earlier, we need to have a solution in place prior to us using that pump station this summer. So more to come on the Let's Talk page, and I will for sure make sure that the board is aware of that as well prior to it being posted. Thank you.
Director Lee?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Line 166, which talks about volumetric billing, and it talks about Q2, Q3, and overall project plan. This is really good news. Is there any anticipated date when we could actually start the mock billing in Pender Harbor? Or, yes, actually, in North and South Pender.
Good question.
Thank you, Chair. So staff are planning to bring a report in late June, either the second cow or the first cow in July, related to what the overall project plan is. Because I think, as previously mentioned in other updates, volumetric billing is really the end of multiple other projects. And so we wanted to make sure that both the board and the public understood what the order of magnitude and various steps needed to get there, and also to provide some proposed timelines for both mock billing, not just for the north and south, but potentially the regional system as well. So more to come. Staff are working quite diligently on this particular project, knowing it's a board priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lee?
I think that's, rather than hold us up anymore, I believe that was my last little question.
Okay, and we're moving on to number 4, which is the 2024 budget debrief and 2025 budget process and timelines, Annex C, pages 30 to 38 of the agenda. And I've got some hands up already here on this one, but I'll look to her. Did you want to speak? Was there a motion on the? Oh, okay. Okay, so there's a motion to move the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Okay, seconded by Director Toth. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor? The motion carries. Any more on this item? Any questions? Or yeah, okay, I see Director Lee.
I just wanted to commend our CFO on sorting through all of the things we threw at her and coming out with such a great report. I read it quite thoroughly and was happy with everything that was in it, so big thanks.
Director McMahon.
Yes, sorry, and if I appear and disappear, I'm having connectivity issues with my device. The community partners part, we had some discussion about how best to liaise with the libraries, as they are by far the largest partners that we have. So would that only be a delegation to pre-budget, or did we envision some other collaboration with them?
We absolutely envision collaboration internally, so staff to staff, with all the community partners, including the libraries. And what we're proposing is, again, to streamline more of the process, both for themselves and for the board, because I think some of the feedback was that timing along with the SERD. So essentially making a 600-page agenda package. So I think we've remedied that one. If there was a desire to just focus with the library, staff would need some more direction on what that would look like as far as further engagement or dialogue amongst the libraries. So we're not quite sure what's envisioned with that. So if we had some more direction, we can most certainly action that.
Okay, Director McMahon.
So I'm checking back on timing again. So they would be coming to round 2? Is that when they would be coming? So we wouldn't see anything from the libraries until round 2?
CFO.
What we're proposing is that they submit sort of a short form proposal, change from the prior year to subsequent years. So what we did this year is those community partners that didn't have any material change would just kind of come through. For the libraries in particular, because they're quite significant in contributions, we actually have an agreement with the Seashell Library, so that's kind of what's an interesting form, is they would just be reporting back to you. There's actually no negotiation for the amount for 2025 because that's fixed in our budget. So again, it would just be received for information. So as far as a delegation, we wouldn't expect them to come to budget. It would be an option to them, an offer that they could come to any committee to outline sort of the status. So it'd just be a reporting back in that form. So the town of the Gibsons and District Public Library do not have a long-term funding agreement. It's an annual agreement and an annual funding ask. So that it would just be, I think, determined based on an amount. So you would see a short form, and whether or not it would be up to the committee to ask whether or not you'd want more information on it. Otherwise, it would just be included in the budget, and we'd carry on.
Okay. Any more questions? Moving on to item 5, which is the Cliff Gilker Park Recovery Project. And I see a number of staff supporting this report. So I will look to them to present.
Sorry, Chair, we're just having issues with our camera. I just wanted to start by introducing the table. So I want to introduce Drew to you. Drew is our Parks Planning and Community Development Coordinator and has been with us for over a year now. But this is his first time in the boardroom, so wanted to welcome him and allow him the opportunity to introduce his reports. But he's not going to be on camera until I get this sorted, but we can certainly proceed. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, good morning. Just to introduce Cliff Gilker. So on November 15th, 2021, the Sunshine Coast Regional District activated the Emergency Operations Center, EOC, in response of localized flooding events experienced in the region. Significantly high volumes of water and erosive processes caused extensive damage to the lower road, the lower waterfall, and zigzag bridges, as well as over 2.5 kilometers of trail within the park. Funding was approved on January 13th, 2022, to secure the consultant to review the impacted bridges and trails and provide options for removal, replacement, repair, and relocation in order to promote flood resiliency. The purpose of the staff report is to present the options identified by the consultant, as well as staff recommendations for the board consideration. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions regarding this project.
Questions? Sure. I'll go to Director Bax.
Sure. Thank you for the report. So what were the recommendations that appear on page 39? Approve $38,800 for the planning consultant fees. Is that correct? That's what we're voting on
yes.
today. And it's not. We're not voting on the funding for the plan. I was wondering if at some point, I was wondering when the public consultation and what form that's going to take when this plan comes to the public, and how the public can have their input.
This is a question for staff.
Thank you. And just Chair, clarification, on page 39, the recommendation is part of the background of the report. It's funding that was already approved to actually do the plan, just for clarification. The public consultation for this particular project was not on anybody's work plan. This report we had hoped to have complete last year, and it just took us a bit longer than anticipated working with the consultant. But we have worked with communications, and we are able to do a limited community engagement because we do think that it's important to go back to the community. So we are going to propose a Let's Talk page be developed, and we anticipate launching that probably mid-June once this recommendation has gone through its proper process. The Let's Talk page would probably provide some survey questions and an opportunity for feedback to for the public's perspective, but we don't have the resources or capacity at this point in time to do anything more fulsome. Thank you.
Director McMahon.
Yes, I will have that same question about Chester House, but we'll get to that next. With both these projects, do staff think there's any chance that under the new and soon-to-be-released agreement for gas tax funding with the federal government that we might be able to put some community, whichever it is, fund towards either or both of these projects?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start, and then if there's further that's required. We haven't looked at the funding sources. That would be part of what we would do in developing the budget proposals. We would work with finance about the most appropriate funding sources. Thank you.
Director Inkster.
It's just an operational question on this proposal, which I'm glad to see. I just wanted to ask staff if they have any idea how, if it moves forward after the consultation, et cetera, money looks like it will probably be in place. How long do they envision the structures that are needing repair will be not able to be utilized? Is the plan, because of the type of proposed bridge replacement, probably a single span added to infrastructure, will there be just limited closure of what is most likely in one case a large access point through the park, upper park trails? Thanks.
Thank you, through the chair. That's a great question. I do want to take the opportunity. The reason that the materials and the truss bridges were recommended was we had a number of criteria that we used to evaluate the project, and that was construction costs, lifestyle costs, durability, maintenance, sustainability. So those were all considered. You are correct. There will be a closure of certain parts of the parks during the different pieces of the construction. Hopefully we can maybe do some rolling construction closures. We haven't got that far yet. That would need to be discussed with whatever construction consultant we had when we get to that point in the project. Thank you.
I was wondering if there will be opportunities for you to, and for staff to entertain volunteers and to utilize the goodwill of the community in this endeavor to refurbish this park that is so loved by everyone.
Good question.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. It is a great question. At this point, it's premature. We're not even there. However, we do have a specific project highlighted in our service plan where we're looking at volunteerism and how we can make a more formal program to enable those opportunities. There are low-risk opportunities that we can engage volunteers in. There are some components of this project that we won't be able to engage volunteers in because they're more technical in nature. But when we get to that point in time, we do hope that we can offer that opportunity, and then we'll see what pieces we can work with the construction manager to engage volunteers on, and then we'll see what type of uptake we have. Thank you.
Thanks. There is a recommendation on page 39. Other than... Okay, go ahead. Another question.
I do have questions about the use of non-natural materials in the rebuild, and I was wondering when would be the most appropriate time to bring that up. Well, steel is natural, but it's very processed. But I was wondering why has it been deemed that like-for-like replacement is not appropriate?
For that.
So thank you, and thank you for the question. As I mentioned, we had criteria that we looked at, and durability, climate resiliency, longevity, so the life of the asset were very important to us. So these bridges are not a like-for-like replacement. We are finding that when we're using natural materials, the life on those are relatively short. With high maintenance. And so we were trying to take all of those into consideration when we brought forward the recommendations that are in front of you right now. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer.
Director Bax. Okay. We've got a recommendation. Director Bax is moving the recommendation.
I'm moving the
I'll take that.
recommendations
Sure,
as
and
they
then is there a seconder? Seconded by Director McMahon. All those, well, is there any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Oh yeah, we don't vote, yeah. Neither do I. I rescind my vote. Thank you. And I trust you're still up here for the next item, which is number 6 on the agenda, Chester Park Pedestrian Bridge Recovery Project, Annex E, pages 46 to 54.
There we go. On November 15th, 2021, the Sunshine Coast once again activated the Emergency Operations Center, EOC, in response to localized flooding events experienced within the region. One of the SCRD's sites impacted by localized flooding was the pedestrian access bridge leading to the Chester House Hall property along Ocean Beach Esplanade. On April 28, 2022, funding was approved to secure a consultant to review the bridge and revetment wall and provide options for replacement that included considerations for mitigating potential impacts of future flooding events. The purpose of this staff report is to present the options identified by the consultant's report, along with staff recommendations for board consideration. Once again, we're very happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Director McMahon, I think you already provided notice. You have questions? Go straight to you.
Yes, I actually have a lot of questions. So I'll start with the revetment wall. Is it our wall? It's part of the property. So do we have obligations going forward to repair and maintain it?
Thank you for the question. It is our understanding it is our asset. So yes, it is our responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, just being completely clear here, because one of the issues with that wall is that it is no longer high enough for the flows of the stream that we have experienced recently. This is a very beloved facility. Everybody wants to get it back running. But you kind of do have to ask the question, is it worth paying $723,000 to get better use out of a hall that we charge $15 an hour for? The business case is a little tough here. I also have concerns about the broader strategy around the estuary and Chester Park. The realistic lifespan of the parks and the infrastructure in the face of climate change and atmospheric rivers and sea level rise. And so I think that a broader discussion is merited, and the question is when and how and what would that look like? Does staff have any off-the-top suggestions?
Looking to staff.
Thank you for the question through the chair. So this report is very specifically dealing with the bridge because that is what the funding was provided to do. Yes, I understand that it's part of a bigger picture for sure, but I felt it was important that we close the loop on this particular piece. So there certainly is the option to not proceed with the replacement of a bridge at this point in time until we have a more fulsome conversation about the park in its entirety. That is not on the work plan for this year. That would have to be something that could be directed by the board to make a priority for future years. But at this point, this is in front of you to talk about the bridge and the access to the park. Thank you.
Director McMahon?
So in that case, we will not have a solution for this bridge for at least a year, another year, I should think, even were we to pass this and put it on a fast track. So what interim measures are we going to take to ensure access to the hall? Because right now in the winter, it is muddy. There are tripping hazards. There's no lighting. A lot of people, the bookings of the hall have dropped dramatically, and I think it's partly because people don't realize the hall is open. So do we have an interim plan to manage the hall?
Staff.
Yes, thank you. The interim measures in place. It's not ideal, but there is access to the hall. There's a pathway, but it's not lit. You're correct. We don't have repair and maintenance funding at sort of an unending pot of funding to go in and to do anything further than what has been done to retain access to the hall. I believe that our facility and bookings coordinator has done her best to make sure that people are aware the hall is open, whether or not it's the access that's the barrier. We did find that we still had wedding bookings and such happening. So there is access. It's not ideal. I totally understand that. But that is an option that we could develop further, but that would take funding. And that is an option that is contained within this report as well. Thank you.
Director Stan, I saw hand up and down, okay. CFO?
Yeah, just wanted to comment that the board did defer a budget proposal for reconsideration in 2025 to review or do a park service review. That could be in contemplation to how we review all of our assets, but we haven't really delved into the scope of that. But understanding that that does not help with the timing of this. Thank you.
Director Stanford?
I'm not as cognizant of the specifics of this area. I'm just wondering what the current access point, is that through the road that's described later in the report? Is that what's currently used?
Director McMahon?
Sure. You can't get directly to the house without going over the vehicle bridge over Chester Creek, which has no shoulders, so it's really quite dangerous. And then the path into the yard is somewhat steep. It's sloped. And then there isn't really a proper path connecting to the house, as I discovered at 7 o'clock at night in the rain. in the winter. And there was a lot of mud being tracked into the house, and people couldn't see where they were going. And, you know, the average age in our areas, it was pretty challenging. The house itself could be used, but there's a further question is if we were to defer repairs to the revetment wall, does that put the house at risk of further flooding?
Chair, if that is a question, I would suggest yes, it does. It remains in its current state. So if we experience severe flooding, like we have been recently, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are we getting any closer to whether we want to recommend a budget proposal or not? Director McMahon?
Well, we have to do the revetment wall, and as part of the revetment wall, I imagine there will be permitting and studies and everything else. So I think that a budget proposal is appropriate, but I'm wondering if the budget proposal should not include some funding to deal with the access in the intervening time, because we have no idea how long it's going to take to get the permitting for all of this. And we're going to have to deal with Modi too, you know, add 2 years. So I think there should be an interim access plan with some amount of budget, some small but significant budget to improve the current access options.
Okay, so do we want to move the recommendation first and then maybe consider a second motion too?
Sure.
Okay.
I will move the recommendation on
Moved
page
by
46.
Director McMahon, seconded by Director Lee. Any discussion of the recommendation? Director Stamford.
Reading into this, I see a lot of similarities to the concerns we had with Cooper's Green and how we move forward with any older building that is so close to the waterfront and vulnerable to climate change. For those reasons, I will be voting against this motion.
Any more discussion on this? All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries with Director Bax and Stamford opposed. Further motion from Director McMahon.
Yes, I would like to see a staff proposal, number 1, for interim access to the hall. But I believe, sorry, I'm trying to remember, was there a condition assessment done on the hall in the last few years?
Staff?
Yes, thank you for the question. I believe the last condition assessment was pre-COVID, but we do have one. Thank you.
Back to
Okay,
you.
in that case, I think I'll just end there, that staff come forward with an interim plan for better, safer access to the hall until the bridge can be repaired.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Director Lee. Any discussion, further discussion on this motion? Director Stamford, you still got a hand up. Yeah. Director Bax.
Yeah, I'm looking at the bottom of page 52, there's a development of a permanent access on the east side of the park. It's $140,000. I wonder if this could be a solution in the interim, perhaps adding a handrail on the pedestrian bridge. I was wondering what staff thinks of that. Page 52 at the bottom, the last cells. And it's on the map as well, if you look at the adjoining map with this report.
It looks like staff understands this, so may be able to clarify for other directors. So.
Thank you, Chair. If I understand the question, it was a handrail to the bridge, which is the bridge by the road bridge, which is not our jurisdiction. It's Modi's jurisdiction. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Any more discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion? I think that, any opposed? Yeah, so that carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we're moving on to the Sunshine Coast Chamber of Commerce and Sunshine Coast Tourism Grant Payments item, number 7, Annex F, pages 55 to 64. And I'll look to our CFO.
Yeah, very brief, Chair. This is a housekeeping issue because of the change in structure with the chambers on the Sunshine Coast. And so although when we were presented the delegation in November, it was a proposal, now it's formalized, and how they're going to be running some of the programs that were funded as part of the 2024 budget are going to be administered a little differently. So this is to rectify that if the funders are amenable. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking for maybe a motion on this, unless there are questions. Director Stamford moves it, seconded by Director Gabius. Any discussion of the recommendation? All those in favor? All those opposed? I just want to make sure we've got the right, yeah, okay. That motion carries unanimously. And then item 8 is the minutes of the Area A Advisory Planning Commission from March 27th, 2024. Are there any questions on these minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on to, oh, there's one. Has a question.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I understand this is Director Lee's area. I wonder if staff has been in touch with the APC to address their concerns from the July meeting, from the recommendation.
Oh, I see GM Hall online. Go ahead, GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. The concerns that were raised back in July 2023 were part of the genesis for an all APC workshop held at Field Road. And there will be more discussion on the matter of these bylaw amendments coming up as we look toward a public hearing. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions on the Area A minutes, the APC? Seeing none, I think it's time to move in camera again. This time it's section 90K again. Moved by Director Toth, seconded by Director Lee. All those in favor? Okay, we're moving in camera. And that'll take a couple minutes. We are returning to our public session of the Committee of the Whole of March 23rd, 2024, and I think the only item left on the agenda is to adjourn. Moved by Director Toth, seconded by Director Inkster. All those in favor? The motion carries. Thank you.